Last night, parts of eastern Iowa could see this. Purple and green lighting up the sky, the northern lights, and viewers from across the region sent us pictures of just what they saw. But what causes the sky to light up like that last night?
Well, meteorologist Corey Thompson joins us now to help us answer that very question. To start with, Corey, explain to us, for those who don't know, what are the northern lights?
Well, it's just kind of a reflection of some charged particles in the upper atmosphere hitting other particles, and it causes them to light up, and that's what we're seeing. Normally, it's much further north. It's more toward Canada, Norway, and Sweden and Iceland. If you want to catch it for sure, you head that direction, but sometimes conditions are right and it gets into our neck of the woods too. So let's get a little bit more in depth. The sun is off here, far away of course from the earth, but it's constantly outputting particles from it, not just the light that we see, but also little bits of charged bits of matter. And eventually, occasionally rather, we have these either outbursts of something called the solar wind or something called a coronal mass ejection. That's really just when the sun pushes a big bubble of those particles toward us. And when it does, most of them get deflected around the magnetic field. See, it goes right around and goes off safely into space. But some enter either from the front or the back. When that happens, they hit particles of, say, oxygen or nitrogen in the atmosphere, causing different colors depending on the particles. I know it's kind of small on your screen, but that's why we saw green and red and a little bit of purple last night too.
So why were we in this instance able to see them this far south?
Well, because we had those particularly favorable conditions. So we have a lot of instruments monitoring what's going on in the atmosphere and also in space between here and the sun, because these things do matter. So this is a measurement of the Earth's magnetic field. You see when it's a little bit unsteady like this, where it's going up and down, that's more typical. You see that typically in most days. But last night, this red line, which measures the directional component of the magnetic field, was here. It was pointing south. And that is the orientation for the northern lights to take place. And it was steady. It was the whole night until later by about 2 or 3 when it started to get toward that middle line again. And that's when conditions become less favorable. Let's compare it. So this is a typical day in February where the aurora, you can see it barely on your screen. It's very faint right there. Northern Canada up toward Hudson Bay. We're way down here. But last night, this is a satellite view, and it can actually see the aurora because it was so bright. It's closer to the U.S.-Canada border, even in northern Minnesota. Again, we're much closer to it now on the horizon. That's a distance of about 8,000 miles of a change, and that matters. That's why we can see it when these storms get active.
The pictures are really pretty. It didn't light up the sky. I lit up my social media last night.
Yeah.
I went outside and tried to see it, and I think it's just too much light saturation.
A little cloudy too.
Yeah. So, but while this is a pretty thing to see, are there any other effects that can happen during one of those geomagnetic storms?
Yes, for sure. A geomagnetic storm is what took place last night, and they can cause other issues. So weaker storms do cause just little fluctuations on electrical systems. Satellites can be affected too. Actually, migratory birds can be affected. I'm interested in that. I want to dig into that a little bit more after the show. But when they get stronger, satellite systems can be disrupted. In fact, SpaceX had a launch plan last night for some of its low Earth orbit satellites. But they can be affected by this. They actually had a launch last year, and they lost a few satellites because they did it during a geomagnetic storm. The strongest storms can cause blackouts and damage to electrical equipment. That has been very rare, fortunately, in history. The late 80s, one took place, blacked out a good chunk of Canada. Luckily, we haven't had to deal with that lately, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't get that kind of extreme activity.
Let's hope not. Meteorologist Corey Thompson, thanks so much.